Good morning.
Good morning.
Open your Bibles to 2 Chronicles chapter 15. 2 Chronicles chapter 15. What character have we been talking about the last 2 or 3 weeks?
Well,
Asa, the king of Judah. Who was Asa's daddy? Abijah. Who was Abijah's daddy? Rehoboam. What character trait are we talking about?
courage.
All right, 1 out of 4, we got it. Okay, 1 out of 4. In chapter 15 at the beginning, verse 1, the spirit of Oded, or spirit of God, came upon Azarah of Oded. And when the spirit came on him, what did he go and tell Asa to do, or to be?
He went out and told him, he said, when you are with God, God's with you. I remember that.
He did say that. What did he say before that?
Seek him.
Seek him. Be strong and be of good courage. How did he demonstrate in the part of the story that we looked at last week? How did he demonstrate his courage? That's found in verses 8 and 9.
He tore down the idols and he rebuilt
The altar. Exactly. Okay. And the application of that to you and me is get rid of what?
We better identify what could be idols in our lives and tear it down and get rid of it too.
Exactly. And what does building the altar, restoring what? Worship to God.
Temple worship.
Worship to God. Okay, good. Down to verse 9. We're going to see if we can get through maybe chapter 16 today. Then he assembled all Judah and Benjamin and the people from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon who had settled among them. This is important, catch this reason. For large numbers had come over to him from Israel. And Israel, he's talking about the 10 northern tribes that were rebellious against God. For large numbers had come over to him from Israel when they saw that, what?
God was with him.
That Lord, his God, was with him. Okay? You know, we've, in my entire lifetime, and I think it's probably been this way before Stan, and will be way after. You know, we've done everything we can to try to get people to come to the Lord. Okay? Yeah, Stan here named program after program, event after event, effort after effort. And I'm not saying those are bad, but it's much simpler than that. Okay, how simple is it? Why did these people come over?
Well, they saw somebody that was being blessed by God, and
Yeah.
they wanted to figure out what they could do so that their lives would mimic that.
Yeah, they saw these people's lives blessed, and they said, up here in Israel, our lives aren't blessed. Down there in the southern part of the Israel called Judah, their lives are being blessed. They just whipped up on the Libyans and the Cushites and with a much smaller army. Hey, let's go hang out with them. Okay, so how do we get people to come to the Lord? Don't make it complicated. Let them see God in us. Yeah, be godly. Yeah, we don't have to. And I'm not opposed to knocking doors or whatever you want to do. But I tell you, if any day and time that the word gets out, that there's a body of people someplace that God is with, and it's evident that they're being blessed by God, you don't have to have a personal work program. Okay? You don't have to have a bus ministry. You don't have to have an evangelism program. All you have to do is live that life, and when it's emitted to society, they're going to say, man, I don't know what's going on with those folks, but I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. How did Jesus say that God's disciples would be identified?
Be the salt.
By the way, be the salt of the earth, but by the way you love. By the way you love. So, quick lesson from him. Large numbers came because God was with him. They assembled at Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year. That's important. Remember that. What did I just ask you to remember? 15th year. Say it again.
15th year.
Okay, we got it. Okay. Of Asa's reign. At that time, they sacrificed to the Lord 700 head of cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats from the plunder they had brought back. Where did that plunder come from? Back in chapter 14, when they whipped up on the Libyans and the Cushites. Okay? Can you imagine? Try to picture that scene, would you? We're going to sacrifice to the Lord. We're going to have a little sacrifice. I think we kind of tend to think, well, that means they took one cow or one goat and put them on the altar and sacrificed him. No. 700 cattle. Okay? Not an easy task. How many sheep? 7,000 sheep and goats from the plunder. I don't know how long it would take them to do all that. And I imagine there were some folks, and we're going to make a real important point here. I imagine there were some folks in that group that said, hey, what a waste. Do you imagine do you know how many times and how many people we could feed with all this? And it's plunder. It's a blessing from God. And what did Asa say? Nah.
We're going to give it back to
We're going to sacrifice. We're going to sacrifice. Sacrifice is something that you do that is significant enough that it costs. Got that? Yeah. Sacrifice is something you do that is significant enough that it costs you something. If you do all kinds of things, but there's no cost, it's not a sacrifice. That's a generous gift. And that's nice. But sacrifice costs. Sacrifice costs. Romans 12:1 says that in view of God's mercy, we should present our bodies as living sacrifices. We don't have to get out back here and kill 700 cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats. Okay? All he wants us to do is every day of our life, get up and give my life sacrificially to him. So that means that every day I need to do some things that cost me something, that are inconvenient for me. Because if I'm not, then I'm not sacrificing. And if we are courageous, we'll sacrifice. And not be afraid of the cost, because of the blessing that will come from God. Verse 12. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord. Now remember, we're talking about courage. We're talking about Asa as a leader. We're talking about a leader who is trying to get the people turned back to God. Because in the first verses of chapter 15 it said, in those days it wasn't safe to travel. All the inhabitants of the land were in great turmoil. One nation was being crushed by another, one city because of another, because God was troubling them with every kind of distress. And Asa said, let's not live that way. Let's not live this way. Okay. I know sometimes people think I get too political. Okay. But I want you to think about something. Politics and the direction that it takes our nation is a spiritual issue. Got that? Yeah, it's a spiritual issue. This world that they were living in was turmoil. And Azariah came to Azariah, son of Oded, came to Asa and said, hey, let me tell you what you need to do to fix this. And what he told him to do was, you as the leader need to get these people turned back to God. And when that happens, we're going to see it here in a minute, when that happens, all this turmoil that's in the society and the world that you live in is going to go away. Okay? So what's the solution to the turmoil that we live in? It's you and me and every Christian getting some courage to stand up and say, we're not putting up with this anymore. I saw a teacher from Loudoun County, Virginia, kind of a turmoil place, stood up in front of the school board and said, because you're telling me what to teach and I don't agree with what you're telling me to teach, I resign. That took some courage. We need some courage that stands up to the folks in this world that we live in that are calling the shots and say, no. Oh, you're going to put me in jail? Okay. Hey, while they're hauling me off to jail, would you please videotape that, okay? So we can put it on there, and boy, she'd be excited as can be, okay? Videotape that and put it on YouTube and say, this guy's going to jail because he stood up for what God said to stand up for. Now that's a reason to go.
That's right.
That's a reason to go. They made a covenant. Pardon me?
I said it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Yeah. And we better be a part of it. Don't stand back on the sidelines. Don't stand back on the sidelines and say, okay, go get him, go get him, go get him. Be out front and go get him. They made a covenant with the Lord. Covenant is a powerful word. It's not just okay, I agree to do this.
It's a binding
It's
agreement.
a binding that nothing interrupts. Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. I'm excited about how simple Jesus and God are. If you say, yeah, I'm going to do that, what should you do? You got to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. Don't do it. They made a covenant to seek the Lord. Some of us need to make a covenant to seek the Lord. The God of their fathers, we're in verse 12, with all their heart and soul. Don't make a half-hearted covenant. Don't let your spirituality be half-hearted. Make sure that it's with all your heart, with all your soul. Jesus said the greatest commandment is seek the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your heart, with everything that you're being. Seek the Lord. All who would not seek the Lord, now they were pretty radical back here.
To say the least.
Yeah. I ain't seeking the Lord. Okay, you're dead. Okay. Those who would not seek the Lord were put to death. Boy, what a crazy bunch. Why would they do that? Because they were mean, nasty people? No. Because that would permeate the society. It would influence. It would rub off. They said, we're not going to have that among us. Whether small or great, man or woman. And remember, God identifies people as man and woman. Okay. Just thought I'd throw that in for free. They took an oath to the Lord with loud acclamation. Hey, Marty. Oh, he can't hear me, can he? Hey, Marty, I'm going to seek the Lord. Don't tell anybody. Okay. Yeah, that's not how it works. With loud acclamation. I'm going to seek the Lord, and I want everybody to know that. Everybody to know that. Asa was a courageous man. He led a courageous revolution, a spiritual revolution. They took an oath to the Lord with loud acclamation and was shouting. Man, they were excited. With trumpets and horns. Uh-oh. All Judah rejoiced about the oath. I say things I probably shouldn't say sometimes, Stan, but you do it too, so. Yeah. All Judah rejoiced about the oath. They swore it. What's the word? Wholeheartedly. No half-hearted Christianity. No complacent, easygoing Christianity. Because they had sworn it wholeheartedly. They sought God eagerly You know, these words aren't just in there because, you know, there was so much space to fill. These words are important. I ask you this question this morning. Do you answer this to yourself, okay? Are you seeking God wholeheartedly? And are you eagerly seeking Him? You know what eager is, right? Yeah. They sought God eagerly and they swore wholeheartedly. They sought God eagerly, and He was found by them. If you seek God, you're never going to miss Him. He's always going to find you, no matter what kind of situation you're in. So the Lord gave them rest on every side. Isn't that great? Wouldn't you like for somebody to stand up in the USA and say, man, we have so eagerly and wholeheartedly sought God that in the society that we live in, there is peace on every side. Not turmoil, but peace on every side. How do you get that? Well, you get rid of your idols. You get committed to worshiping God. You make a covenant with God. You make a loud covenant with God. You seek Him wholeheartedly. You seek Him eagerly. And there will be peace in your life. Answer this question this morning, okay? Is peace a word that you would use to describe your life right now? Is that the word you would use? If it's not, then you ought to go back and identify these passages in 2 Chronicles 15 and just reread them. Keep reading them. Because if you don't have peace on your life, something in that formula is missing. Something's missing. King Asa, oh, I like this part. Man, he was a gutsy guy. Let me show you how gutsy he was. King Asa also deposed his grandmother. What's that mean?
Kicked her out.
Kicked her out. She was the queen mother. You suppose that stirred a ruckus in the family? Yeah. Well, why did he do that? He deposed his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother because, okay, why'd you do that, Asa? She had made a repulsive Asherah pole. Sitting out in front of her house was this great big old Asherah pole that was worshiping an idol of worship to Baal. And he said, hey, not having that. You know, I can't be leading this country spiritually and somebody say, hey, somebody in your family's got 3 laptops with all kinds of porn and junk on them. Did you catch that? Yeah. Okay. So he said, we can't have that, Grandma. So I went over to the front yard. He didn't have a chainsaw. I don't know what he had, but he cut the thing down. He broke it up, and he burned it in the Kidron Valley. What do you know about the Kidron Valley?
Kidron Valley was between the Calvary and the city, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was a dump. Yeah, it's where you get rid of all the junk. The Asherah pole was junk. King Asa cut down the pole, although he did not remove the high places from Israel. Now, you may look at that and say, well, what do you mean? Well, Israel were the 10 northern tribes that were controlled by another king and another kingdom. He didn't clean that up. Asa's heart, and boy, I hope this can be said about me when I leave this earth. Asa's heart was fully committed to the Lord all of his life. Wow. You know, if instead of some lengthy, drawn-out funeral sermon, if somebody can just get up and say, hey, Mike was fully committed to the Lord all of his life, I'll be happy with that. I'll be happy with that. He brought into the temple of God the silver and gold, the articles that he and his father had dedicated. There was no more war. Now, what year did I ask you to remember a little while ago? Which year? 15th. There was no more war until the 35th year of Asa's reign. What'd they have? 20 years apiece. 20 years apiece. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, Baasha, the king of Israel, that's those northern tribes, went up against Judah. And they fortified Ramah to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Judah. Okay? I don't know if they built a wall or what they did, okay? But they built it up, and they were trying to quarantine everybody in the southern kingdoms. Hello. Asa then took the silver and gold out of the treasures of the Lord's temple and of his own palace and sent it to Ben-Hadad. I'm going to read quick because we don't have time here. King of Aram. See what he did? Somebody's attacking after 20 years of peace. They had that peace because they did what God said to do through Azariah. So they had 20 years of peace. In the 36th year, I think God says, I'm going to test this. I'm going to test them. He took the silver and the gold out of the treasuries of the Lord's temple and of his own palace and sent it to Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. Damascus was a city that was off, or a country that was off to the east of the northern tribes of Israel. And he said, "Let there be a treaty between me and you, as there was between my father and your father. See, I'm sending you silver and gold. Now break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so he will withdraw from me." Okay? So he's trying to figure out a plan to get this attack stopped. And his plan was, well, I'm just going to gather all the silver and gold out of the temple. Bad idea. Those were there and they were dedicated to God. They weren't dedicated for any other purpose. Took them out of there, went up to Ben-Hadad and said, "Hey, let's team up here. Okay. This king of Israel is starting to give me a hard time down here. Your dad and my dad had a treaty. Let's you and me have a treaty." Okay. That doesn't sound all that bad. It sounds like maybe good warfare. Bad idea. Ben-Hadad agreed with King Asa and sent the commanders of his forces against the towns of Israel. They conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and all the store cities of Naphtali. When Baasha heard this, the king of Israel, who was attacking Asa, he stopped building Ramah and abandoned his work. He said, I can't work on getting set up to attack Judah anymore because I've got this other skirmish going on up here. So I'm going to have to abandon this and go do that. Okay? Then King Asa brought all the men of Judah, and they carried away from Ramah the stones and timber Baasha had been using. With them he built up Geba and Mizpah. So the king Baasha's folks left here, went up there, and Asa's folks moved in and said, well, let's take all their stuff. You know where they're building this wall? Okay, let's tear that thing down and take it and go use it for something useful. Okay, still with me? At that time, Hananiah, the seer, the prophet, came to Asa, king of Judah, and said to him, "Because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hand." He says, you made a bad choice here. Now, why is it a bad choice? Were not the Cushites and Libyans, remember them back in 14? A mighty army, 300,000 against 800,000. They had great numbers of chariots and horsemen. And what happened? You whipped them. You destroyed them. Got all that plunder. Brought it back offered 700 cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats as a sacrifice to God. God blessed you. Yet when you relied on the Lord, He delivered them into your hand. How come? For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. When your heart's fully committed to Him, you're going to be attacked. Satan will, the Bible says when Jesus was tempted in Matthew chapter 4, that after he defeated Satan's temptation, that Satan left him for a season. That's for a little while. And angels came and attended to him. Satan, in the form of Asa's enemies, left him for 20 years. Now they're going to come back. The season has passed. They're going to see if they're still as strong and courageous and as committed to God as they used to be. Yet when you relied on the Lord, He delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord's range for everyone is fully committed. You have done a foolish thing. Now, He didn't say, you say, well, wait a minute. I thought this guy's life was fully committed to the Lord all of his life. It was. But even within our commitment to God, we can sometimes make some foolish choices. I've done that. You've all done that. And we make those foolish choices when we forget to rely on God. That's what happens. You've done a foolish thing. And from now on, oh boy, you're going to be at war. You mean that 20 years of peace? Because of my strength and my courageous leadership, that's going to end because I've made a foolish choice? Yeah. I don't think Asa lost his salvation, but he had to live with the consequences of making a foolish choice. We do too. Well, Asa reacted like a lot of us do. He was angry with the seer. Shoot the messenger! The message was from God, but Hananiah delivered it. Oh, I'm sure none of you have ever gotten angry at anybody who shared a message of God with you that pointed out flaws in your life. Well, we haven't done that, right? Yeah, okay, good. He was angry with the seer because of this. He was so enraged that he put him in prison. Hananiah, you're not going to come in here and tell me what consequences I'm going to suffer. Go to jail. At the same time, Asa brutally oppressed some of the people. I mean, his character completely changed from a peace-loving, strong, courageous person to an angry, bitter, brutal person. How come? Because he made a foolish choice. And he was confronted with the consequences of that foolish choice. What he should have just said is, hey, Hananiah, man, you are so right. And God is so right. I'm going to go back and correct this. I'm going to turn my heart back to God in this instance. The events of Asa's reign from beginning to end are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year, when did this attack that we just read about came? 35th. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa was afflicted with a disease in his feet. What did he have? I don't know if he had diabetes and had neuropathy, or if he just had foot rot. I don't know. Something happened to his feet. Though his disease was severe, even in his illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. It's okay to seek help from physicians, but who else better be involved? God better be involved, because God's the healer. He uses people to heal. Then in the 41st year of his life, And remember, he hasn't had any peace since the 35th year. Asa died and rested with his fathers. They buried him in the tomb that he had cut out for himself in the city of David. They laid him on a bier covered with spices and various blended perfumes, and they made a huge fire in his honor. Good man, fully committed to God, courageous, strong. We need courageous, strong people, Christians, in the world that we live in today, so that the world out there will see that strength, and they will see that strength being displayed through love, not through hate and anger, through love. That's how his disciples will be identified. You can be loving and still be very courageous and be very strong and stand up against that which is ungodly. But you don't have to get brutal and nasty and angry about it. So, we've talked about courage for, 6 or 8 weeks, something like that. Very important character trait that needs to be in your life and in my life every day. So the next time you're kind of confronted with something that you think, wow, this is going to be difficult. This is going to take everything within me. How am I going to go back and read the story of Abijah, Asa's dad, and the story of Asa, and highlight the things that we've highlighted. Demonstrate that courageousness and that strength. And watch God bring peace to your life. Watch him bring peace to your life. Okay? We'll stop there. We'll start another character trait next time I'm up here, okay? Take a break.